I'm going to sweat through my blazer, which has totally happened. Like, I don't care. I'm going to show up.
Hi, so nice of you to join. Welcome back to the Wild Business Growth Podcast. This is your place to hear from a new entrepreneur every single Wednesday morning who's turning wild ideas into wild growth. I'm your host, Max Brandstetter, founder and podcast producer at Max Podcasting, and you can email me at max@maxpodcasting.com to save time with your high-quality podcast. This is episode 265. You never thought we'd get past 264, did you? And today's guest is Volta Voloshin-Smith. Volta Voloshin-Smith is the founder, creative director, artist, illustrator, and educator, to name a few, at Color Snack. At Color Snack, she is on a mission to eliminate stress, burnout, all the things of the like among companies and employees, and she does so through art. More specifically, her flagship workshop is Watercolor Meditation. Ooh, very, very, it's stress reducing even just hearing it. In this episode, we talk what exactly watercolor meditation entails, what exactly Color Snack is, and how Volta took it from lunch break to full-time business, her journey from Moldova to America and assimilating into the culture as a teenager of all times, and everything from wild doodles to wild noodles. It is a wild one, folks, and it is Volta. Enjoy the show. Alrighty, we are here with Volta Voloshin-Smith, who, breaking news, confirmed that it's Voloshin like the ocean. Volta, super, super excited to speak with you and learn the Color Snack story here today. Thank you so much for joining. How you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me, Max. I'm so excited to be here.
Of course. And I, like yourself, having a long last name, it helps to have something that rhymes with it. And I got to start thinking of something that rhymes with Brandstetter. I've never thought of that before. But Voloshin like the ocean is amazing. You could write a poem book with that name on top of your other book and content out there. But anyway, we could talk names this whole time. But
Yeah.
really excited to dive into the Color Snack story. And as kind of a precursor to that, I heard that your interest in art and color and creativity ties back in a way to even Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network. Can you reveal the story behind that?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So actually, my love for art comes from growing up in Moldova. It was like former Soviet Union country, and all of a sudden, like all the TV channels were flooded with colorful cartoons, and of course there was also like the commercials. All of a sudden there were like products that you hadn't even heard of, and I was just so instantly drawn to the colorful cartoons. And I would even, like, especially Cartoon Network, I remember watching it, not even really understanding English because I wasn't studying it at the time, wasn't learning it, but I just loved the colorful pictures and imagery. And then a big part, so this wasn't necessarily on Cartoon Network, but this is a show or like a piece of art that basically really stuck with me throughout the years, and that's the Japanese anime Sailor Moon. And
Oh, yeah.
it's all done in watercolor. And for the longest time, I didn't really know the connection, or I didn't really like realize it's like, oh, that's why I'm so drawn to the medium of watercolors. Is I grew up watching that show, and it was just so colorful and so vibrant that I was just in love.
I distinctly remember Sailor Moon because all my folders and no, I'm just kidding. But no, I remember a lot of girls in my class in like fifth grade. I don't know why that year sticks out, but it was around that time that everybody brings their own folders and binders and stuff to school, and there were a lot of girls that had like Sailor Moon on everything, like Sailor
Oh
Moon
my God.
folders,
Yeah.
binders, backpacks. Like it was taken over. So there's clearly something about that was it was like a movement in that style of animation. And obviously, it has never been bigger even than it is
Yeah.
today. But that's so cool. There was like that explosion of color and in art into your life.
Thank you. Yeah.
So there's kind of like a new inspiration and creativity there, which foreshadows what you're doing now with your career. But for somebody like me, and like I assume many of us who aren't too familiar with Moldova, but besides it being a country and where it's located in the world, can you shed some light on what your life was like there before coming to the U.S.?
Moldova is a wonderful country. The people are wonderful, but living there was really tough in terms of, especially after like the Soviet Union fell apart. There was a lot of corruption everywhere. It was just like really hard to make a living and be honest about it. Like I just remember in my childhood, it was my parents like were working like several jobs trying to make ends meet, and it was, even though like they were working and were employed, there were months where they wouldn't receive their salary or like they wouldn't get paid just because it was like there was no money to. So that kind of like gives an idea, like a little bit of a glimpse. So it was really hard growing up there, even though, I have very fond memories of visiting my family and my grandmother in the countryside and all those things. My dad fought really hard to immigrate. He's a math professor. And so basically, he was just trying all kinds of ways. He would attend conferences in different countries, make connections with people, and basically find any way that we could possibly move. At the time, like when I immigrated with my parents, I was 14, and as like a typical teenager, that was so hard. I like just being a teenager in general was like, and then on top of that, coming to a whole new country. And at the time, I will say, like, I did not realize, how important this was for me. So it was like really challenging to kind of assimilate and get used to it. But I will say that I am so like forever grateful to math and my dad, because of him and his achievements in the field, that we were able to come to the United States and have such a much better life.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. It's an amazing story, and I, as you hinted at, those early teenage years and teenage years in general are such a pivotal and such a tough time for so many of us. And then from your standpoint, it's let's move around the world and get thrown into this culture that's completely different. On top of that, what was the biggest challenge in those early days? When you first got to the U.S.
It was just feeling so alone. I just felt completely like I couldn't really connect with anyone in school. And then like on top of that, we also moved 3 times to 3 different states. And so like it felt like every year I had to like start over with, like being the new kid and also the new foreign kid. And it was just kind of, that was like a really challenging part of kind of just, you know, getting used to it.
What real quick? I know you're in Texas now, but what other states have you lived in?
Yeah, Illinois, Delaware, and Alabama.
Wow. Okay. Just so the traditional Illinois, Alabama, Delaware, Texas pipeline.
Yeah, yeah, yep, exactly.
throw in Moldova as well, but
Yeah.
let's get to art and more specifically color snack. So you mentioned, from an early age, shout out Sailor Moon, you had an interest in art, you had an interest in color. There's something about that that really spoke to you, and so many, shout out my folders. But when did you start realizing that art or something involving art could actually become, a professional career for you?
It was about 5 years ago. So before I started my business, I started with a blog, and the blog was Color Snack. And the whole idea behind the name was that at the time when I started it, it was about 7 years ago. I was working full time. I was going to school full time, pursuing a master's degree because I thought that would just fix my unhappiness with my current job, as one does. It's
I think it's very common for that to happen.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, I was so busy. I had no life, no social life because I was doing homework every day and on the weekends. It was also like another like heavy thing happened during that time period that was just a very challenging time for me. And just stumbled upon watercolors by accident because I didn't go to art school. I went to business school and I studied marketing because my parents, being like immigrants, they always kind of nudged me to pursue a more secure path. So something that's more, and also when I was growing up or even going to college, I didn't know, I didn't have anyone in my life as an example to be like, oh, like you can make money with art. I just didn't know any of that. But then eventually, during that difficult time in my life, I came back to art by just picking up a set of watercolors and just playing around with it. And I realized that whenever I would engage even just a few minutes at a time, it made me feel so much better. And so I wanted to share that with everyone else. So that's why I started Color Snack, because it's essentially, I was creating 5-minute tutorials that were like a snack of color. So like I knew everyone, we were all busy, have busy lives, but if we just spend like a few minutes doing something creative, it can just help improve our mood so much. And so that was like kind of at the heart of my business, is that idea that creativity and creative activities are so good for our mental health and just our life in general.
That's one of my favorite names I've ever heard, by the way. Color Snack. I like, who doesn't like colors and who doesn't like snacks? And it's
Thank
so
you.
like succinct and to the point. So
Yeah.
I think it's brilliant. It's colorful and it's hunger reducing.
And actually, like the second meaning, like with time, as I was kind of pursuing this creative career, I realized, oh, you can, there's like food illustrators out there, and that's like kind of the main theme of what I always paint is food. And so like it kind of got a second meaning on top of it. It's just like, it's not just like tutorials for like creativity and all that, but also the actual colorful snack, which is like what I love to paint and love to eat. So it's very on brand.
Exactly. It's a double entendre. Maybe that's why I like it so much. Is I like plays on words and double entendres, things like that.
Yeah.
And so it's all there. At what point did you start to pitch companies or throw your name out there as like, hey, this could be an awesome workshop or training for employees?
It started to happen like a little bit before the pandemic began, is I was participating in a lot of like public events and art markets and fairs and all. I was basically doing anything to just like get my name out there and connect with people. Eventually some people were like, oh, like, do you teach classes? And I remember like the first time someone approached me about that, I was so apprehensive or like kind of scared to say yes, but I said yes anyway. And even at the time, I was already like, I was creating tutorials, I was teaching classes on Skillshare, but I had never done it in person, and so that was like a brand new challenge, but I was just so excited to try it. I, said yes before I felt ready, and then loved the process so much. And then, of course, like the pandemic happened. Surprisingly, like I thought, oh, like so much of my business will be lost. And in a way it was, but in a way it was like pivoted into a new direction. I just kind of started doing a lot of content online and showing up in on different platforms and basically, sharing what I loved. And then people started reaching out to me. They're like, "Hey, I attended your free workshop. Like, come do this for my company." It is, Max. It is so crazy to me. Like, I still pinch myself when I think about this because prior to like doing my own business, I spent like 7 years in the corporate and then in the agency world. And during my lunch breaks, I would bring my watercolor set because I wanted to just like take a break from the computer and, do a little bit of like creative self-care. I noticed that eventually like a lot of my coworkers would join me in. And so it's so crazy that now I get to do this on like a professional level to basically serve these corporate clients that are open to like the idea of a watercolor workshop that helps you reduce stress and unwind and tap into that creativity.
That's the dream. I mean, to do something like you just showed the example there yourself. Like if you can find a career where people will pay you to do something that you already love, and in turn you're solving problems or helping out others, like it obviously keeps you fulfilled as well. That's a really really good setup there. So who knew during your lunch breaks years ago that you were working on this future, now present, business? That I got chills. You got me pumped up.
Oh, thank you.
Of course. Well, thank you. But yeah. So people started saying, "Hey, you should do this," and you started doing this for companies. What kind of companies were you working with at the start? Like, did you kind of have like a target audience, if you will, back then?
Actually, yes, I did start out with not companies, but like apartment complexes. I guess they're companies too. I mean, some companies own them, right? So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like
Residential buildings, right?
residential,
Yeah,
yes, residential buildings, because they were always looking for like fun things to do for residents.
yeah. Well, we live in an apartment complex here, and all that. Yeah, they try to like 3 or 4 times a month. They try to do some sort of
Yes,
activity like this.
yeah.
Not as fun as yours, but
No, I mean, by the way, I can fly out wherever. So
perfect. We'll put in a word.
yeah.
Hoboken.
But basically, like I started out that way, and then as far as like having a particular target of companies, I've worked with so many different ones that I really kind of like attracted in a way by just meeting people that worked there, and they liked what I was doing, and then they thought of me to to pitch for like a team building or like corporate wellness kind of initiative. So that's kind of how it happened. And then with the pandemic specifically, I did a lot of free workshops with Creative Mornings, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with this community. It's global. It's such a wonderful place, and they often have an opportunity to teach anything that like any subject that you are passionate about. And so I would host a lot of these, specifically like the watercolor meditation workshop, just because it was such a stressful time, and I wanted to kind of help people tap into calm with art. And so because I was doing a lot of those, a lot of the corporate people later that were attending them later kind of brought me into their company. So
I mean, it goes back to networking and just kind of, as you were saying, like putting yourself out there and just
yeah.
try to be seen, be help help out people in as many ways as you can. And flash forward to today, and your clients that you've worked with include like Home Depot, Meta. We could list on and on and on. But some of the biggest names out, household names as far as giant companies and companies with a big impact. And you mentioned watercolor. It'd be nice if I could pronounce it, but you mentioned watercolor meditation, which I know is your flagship workshop or program, or however you prefer to say it. For those of us who aren't familiar, can you give a little sneak peek at what that actually means if you're getting watercolor meditated?
Absolutely. Oh, I've never used it as a verb before. I'm
Me
excited.
neither.
Thank you. When one does get watercolor meditated, the
You can cancel that anytime you want if you don't like it after a
yeah.
while. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, so basically the premise of my course and workshop watercolor meditation is that it combines very simple breathing techniques with very simple brush marks. And the idea is that you not only get to really pause and be in the moment, but you also practice those intentional breaths. And a lot of the meditations that I share, they specifically focus on like making we're encouraging the participant to exhale, like have those longer exhales, because whenever we take our time with our exhales, we activate the calmness in our body. So it not only like focus helps you, but also like helps you focus on by, you're engaging with your hand and your arm. And so you're painting and your brain has no other option but to focus on what's in front of you. So it becomes like a visual point of focus, so that if someone that is struggling with traditional meditation, they could still like tap into the benefits of those meditative benefits without doing the traditional route, which, by the way, like I absolutely recommend. And I've been meditating myself for over 10 years, but it is such a hard habit to build. I will say, even to this day, I need like a guided audio meditation, because I can't just close my eyes and like focus on my breath. It sounds so easy, but it's so
Yeah,
hard to
I
do.
thought you just close your eyes and you reach nirvana, right? That's how it works.
I wish.
So, what was involved in creating this workshop? If somebody's going through, if somebody's getting watercolor meditated, what did you do, I guess, creatively to get to that point of like, all right, here's what it looks like for them. Like, here's what they're painting. Here's how much time it takes. Like, more on the back end of that. I'm curious.
Really cool question. I don't think anyone has ever asked me about that part of the course. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. That's my favorite thing to hear.
Basically, like the process of the workshop is I teach, where I start out with very simple watercolor techniques just to get people like used to the medium and kind of get acquainted with it. And then I lead the participants through a series of watercolor meditations, and they typically can last from like 5 to 7 minutes, and depending on how much time we have together, like I can kind of like adjust how many I share with people. And then the like my favorite part too is, I do teach this through watercolors because it's my favorite medium and I find it so soothing. But all of these exercises that I share can be absolutely done with a pen and just paper. So you could still kind of, if you like attend a workshop and you learn, I just like, I want to share the tool that you can use something like a visual expression. You can use your creative self expression to bring a little bit that moment of calm into your life. And so the different meditations, they also vary. Like some do combine like the breathing aspect. You're taking a deep breath in as you're painting a circle, and then as you're exhaling, you're painting another circle. Others are a little bit more of like, you're doing like a series of repetitive marks, which also, like whenever we're engaging in that repetitive motion, our brains like drop into that kind of calmer state, and also like kind of like a primer for getting into flow, that magical space where we just like lose track of time and just feel so good. It's like a brain massage.
Ooh, I like brain massage. Perfect. That's a keeper. In addition to like circle and trying out different strokes, shout out the show Different Strokes. What types of items or objects are your, I guess we could call them your students, or maybe they're your
Yeah.
clients too.
Mhm.
Are your students slash clients actually painting?
That is my favorite part about this concept, is that we're not painting any specific object. So they're very much like abstract shapes, which I've found from like doing this for so many years now, is that especially for beginners or people that are maybe afraid to try art, they think, oh, I'm not doing this right. Like they're very like self-critical. Engaging in or creating an art piece that doesn't really represent anything kind of helps them loosen up a little bit. That's why I always strive to make it very approachable and accessible, so that even if you've never like picked up, a water brush before or painted with watercolors, you can still enjoy the process and get like the benefit of it. And my favorite studies out there are, saying that engaging in a creative activity like helps reduce stress. And the best part is that you don't need any prior art experience to really enjoy that. So it just like opens up the doors for the possibility to like anyone. Like if you have any kind of sort of interest, or even if you think you don't, but I encourage you to give it a try because it can just be so transformative and so fun too.
Yeah, it's so welcoming.
Yeah.
I can't get past brain massage. That's like almost as good a term as color snack. but but if you were to look back on this incredible journey you've been on over the past several years, if you had to pick one thing, like a tactic or a strategy that you've done that has made this thing a success, what would it be?
It's to show up consistently and show up when you are scared, when you feel anxious. Show up. I have never regretted not doing something outside of my comfort zone, but I've always regretted not like trying it out. So I would say just it is definitely hard. And I'll be like the first to say I have extreme like social anxiety. I like have very uncomfortable, anxious feelings before I do something big, like teach a workshop, do live painting events. But I just realized that, like, that is just my brain trying to protect me. And, like, I'm grateful for it. But I know that, like, I'm on a bigger mission. And, like, I hope that with time it'll get easier. But even if it doesn't, I just so believe in this idea that art can help us heal and feel better, and that I just like whatever it is that I'm feeling, the discomfort, the like feeling of, oh, they're gonna judge me, or I'm gonna look weird, or I'm gonna say something funny, or I'm gonna sweat through my blazer, which has totally happened. Like, I don't care. I'm gonna show up.
I don't care. I'm going to show up, blazer sweat stains or not. That's kind of been my motto for the Podcasting to the Max newsletter as well. Making a point to show up every Thursday and hoping that you continue to join and grow this thing as well. The Podcasting to the Max newsletter is where podcasting meets entrepreneurship and terrible puns and dad jokes and things that it might make you smile, or it might make you like throw darts at a cutout of my head, one or the other, maybe both. But anyway, you can sign up at maxpodcasting.com/newsletter to get that short and sweet email from me every Thursday. Now, let's get into where art meets mental health. So that segues perfectly to it's a segment that's typically about inspiration and creativity. And I think with your business and what you do, I mean, it's all inspiration and creativity. And more specifically, I want to dive a bit more into art and mental health. I mean, what you just said perfectly describes how, the benefits of it and how stress reducing it can be, and how anxiety reducing, which anxiety is like, I feel like it's just around the world has never been at a higher level, and so many of us feel it all the time. Sorry, by the way, for like I think the fact that you're waiting and like you're probably stressed out for this interview, and then you're like, oh no, how's it gonna go? And then you see me and you hear the first dad joke and you're like, wow, this guy's nothing to worry about.
Okay,
So,
I love dad jokes. So
perfect.
and I was a little nervous beforehand.
No, nothing to be nervous about. But art and mental health, can you speak to, just from what you've seen about research and your own experience, kind of like the science of like why art is such a great thing from a mental health standpoint?
Disclaimer, I'm not, a neuroscientist. I'm not also not an art therapist. But I do like, I do have my own therapist, and I love to read books on neuroscience and how the brain works. And mostly like a lot of that does stem from my own like lifelong struggle with anxiety. I think one of my favorite books that I've recently read is Your Brain on Art. And that is like such a fascinating resource, and also so validating to read for anyone who's like in the creative space, because they share so many different studies of how engaging in like dance movements helps with your mental health. Also, like just the fact of your brain, like when you have that, like I mentioned, a point of focus right in front of you, your brain has, it struggles to kind of do two things at the same time, even though we're all thinking like, oh, multitasking is a real thing. Like it's not. um so then the best part of like using that idea of like, oh, I'm stressed out, I have so much anxiety, I can't like calm down. Well, whenever we are engaging in that creative, very mindless kind of, or not mindless, but more so like mindful, because you're being intentional, but it becomes mindless from the point of view of like your thoughts are calming down. It's, like engaging in that creative process. Another cool thing too is you can take it and even like further step is try to do like just some doodles with both, engaging both of your hands. Because like typically, you'll go for your dominant hand. If you are starting to do some like wild doodles with both of your hands, I guarantee you your brain will just completely be like, I don't even know where I'm at, like what's happening. Like you'll be so engaged in the process. I will say, like, whenever I share this example in my workshops, I have a hard time teaching it because as I'm demonstrating and I'm doing it, the part of your brain that like is responsible for speaking is kind of like gets a little shut down. so I'm telling you, it totally works. Like if you need just a quick moment of calm, like try to doodle something with both of your hands and engage your brain in that way, and you will see that it'll kind of help you refocus, recenter yourself.
Wild doodles are our favorite type of doodles on the Wild Business Growth Podcast. So I appreciate you
Yes.
throwing that in there. But I just from you mentioning that about like the thought of doing something with both hands at doodling, I think it was something that both hands at the same time. If I could talk, like my brain went crazy just hearing that. And so that's a great little tip, a great little pick me up if you need it. Why is watercolor remain your favorite in this space?
I love watercolors because of how accessible they are. When I was like in my busiest, most challenging years of my life, I just remember how I wanted to do something creative. And the idea of just like, oh, I have to set up a space and then like put on an apron. Like I don't want to get stuff on the floor. Like, I was so worried about the maintenance aspect of creating. And so when I picked up a small set of watercolors, I love that you can just open up and all the colors are there and you don't have to spend time like worrying with tubes. And it's also like very flexible in terms of like the watercolors, they go a long way and they don't create a big mess. Even when like your palette dries, you can just add a little bit of water and the paints work again, which you can't really do that with other mediums. So watercolor for the win. um
Is that like your go-to hashtag there? Hashtag there.
yeah.
The alliteration, nice. The jokes
Yeah.
are flying around, but no, that's the ease and accessibility there is awesome, and simplicity. And it's funny because with pencils or pen, it is super simple to, in theory, to pick it up and just doodle like that. But it's also, I don't know which hand you are, but I'm a lefty. And so
I'm
growing
a
up,
lefty.
yeah, but lefties, so like just as well that when you're not painting and don't have that brush to separate you, when you're using pen or pencil, all that gets on the side of your hand and it's like all over. Or like when you're writing papers at school, it's the same sort of thing. So while it might seem simple, it might actually be messier than watercolor or paint even.
Absolutely, yeah.
Meditation is another piece that is intrinsically tied into all of this. And so you've meditated for the past decade, you mentioned, and I know you said it's not easy, but what are a couple tips that you can share for anybody that's wishing to get into the meditative space or state?
I would definitely recommend to start super small. I remember when I was starting out, I would literally just do 2 minutes, and maybe it was like in the car before going into my like 9 to 5. For me, it was about showing up for this practice because I kept hearing everyone say like, "Oh, this helps with your anxiety, it helps with your stress," and I'm like, I have all of those. Like, I need help. So, literally, like, even if 2 minutes is too long, like, start with 30 seconds. I think as long as you consistently showing up in the best way that you can, and also don't be like judgmental if you mess a few days, or if you think that, oh, maybe I'm not doing this right. There's no right or wrong way to meditate. I prefer to do it laying down, and a lot of people say that you should be sitting up because you'll fall asleep. And you know what? Maybe sometimes it did happen that I did take a little nap, and you know what? I'm better for it. Like,
Right. I feel like because I'm a huge proponent of naps, I feel like if I got to start getting serious about meditating, it's going to be really tough to differentiate between the nap and meditative state.
it could be a napitation. I don't know,
Yeah,
like.
Napa. Yeah, in Indianapolis. No.
Yeah. Another thing that I also wanted to share in terms of like building a meditation habit, or even like any habit in general, is I encourage people to celebrate, like, not the streaks of like, oh, I showed up for like a whole month every day, but every single time that you return to the habit. So the number of streaks. And I kind of like came to this realization by because I meditate with a meditation app that has guided meditations, and on there, I do have, it shows me like how many hours I've meditated throughout my like last 10 years, and all this, like all these stats. But like the one that I'm most proud of is like the number of streaks, because like I have missed days, but I do keep coming back, and it's like that's the desire to keep trying again and again to build this habit is like what I think we should all focus on in terms of, yeah, like streaks are great. And like when you have great days and great weeks and life is perfect, like of course you're going to show up for your habit, but like life is life is can get so crazy and wild sometimes. that,
Wow, there's wild doodles flying everywhere.
yeah, exactly.
No, but I love that approach of focusing on how many times you return to it and kept that going, kept the streaks going. What is the name of that meditation app, by the way?
It's Calm.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard of it.
I'm like such a huge fan of them, and there's tons of other ones out there too. I don't want to be like they're, I'm not paid to say it. I just legit love this app.
So let's legit wrap up with some rapid fire Q&A. You ready for it?
Okay, yeah.
All right, let's get wild. We'll get some wild doodles going yet again. What is the hardest food to paint with watercolor?
I did like a pasta dish for a client one time, and it was just like the reference photo was like really really hard to work with. So I had to like look up the dish and see photos from other people, and then kind of like absorb that information, and then still like kind of make it look like the dish that they wanted. So I would say it was probably like, I don't remember the exact name of that. It was a pasta dish.
No, that makes total sense. The wild noodles to go along with the wild doodles. But
Very
no, I
wild.
feel like noodles, yeah, they're everywhere. It's raining spaghetti and meatballs. But the noodles are, no, that just sounds hard to turn into art in any form, because it's like so many lines going every which direction, and then there's so much like
Yes.
depth
And
there.
like the shadows too, because it's like, they're overlaying on each other, and they can just be flat noodles. They're gonna have, some substance to them. So it's like the shade. Yeah, it was it was wild.
We had a previous guest who I asked a similar question to, about it was about photographing food and like what food is the hardest to photograph, and her answer was actually salad, because salad, there's so many shadows there, and so it's the same
Ah,
idea. And it's like when you're trying to make something like perfect for paintings or photograph, the shadows, that the more shadows, the less merry, I guess.
yes.
All right, and so as you can see, rapid fire, super quick. Now, what's your favorite painting that you've ever done all time?
It actually is not of a food.
Oh no, you can't answer that. No, I'm just kidding.
It's a painting of my late cat, Sal.
Oh,
He
I'm
passed
sorry.
away during the pandemic, which was so devastating because it was very like an unexpected. He had a terminal illness that we just didn't know about. As a rescue, we're not told anyway. I just remember like it was just so like heart wrenching to lose him. I typically never really paint cats. I never painted him. I don't know why. I just was not. I don't know. Just did not have that connection. And then, like, as a way to kind of heal myself a little bit from his passing, is I painted one, like it was a very small watercolor piece that I just remember, like, once I finished it, I was like, I will never sell this. Like, this is mine. And usually, like, I'll paint something. I'm like, okay, yeah, done. Here you go. Like, put it on the site. Let's go. But this was just like, it was just such a deeply connected piece to me and like my experience with sharing my life with this like animal, this creature that I just like. Yeah, I would say that it's that one.
Yeah. And I thought you were going to say like a banana. No, I'm just going. But no, I appreciate you sharing that. And sorry for like I'm the dick here for these questions, but stirring up memories. But no,
No, no, you're fine.
that's beautiful and like a beautiful way to memorialize them.
Yeah.
On a completely, I guess, inappropriate segue, uh, that makes no sense. What is the worst that someone's messed up the pronunciation of Voloshin?
Not very many people have messed up Voloshin. What they have butchered a lot is my real first name, which
Oh,
so Volta is my nickname, and I go by that because it's just easier to spell and pronounce. My like legal first name is Olesa, and it's spelled Olesea. And so there's the word C in it, and naturally, a lot of people thought it was pronounced Ol C or any variation of that. And so uh, when I moved from Alabama to Texas, it was kind of like a fresh start. Like it was after college. It was like, I'm gonna be meeting a lot of people here. Like I'm over this. I'm just over it. And so I was like, I'm gonna go by my artist name Volta. And it was weird how like I decided to go by that name even though I was in the corporate world for a while. But then eventually I kind of like still found my way into the art world. So that was like the beginning of it.
this makes perfect sense though because your name has sea in it. So you had the sea, and then you also have the ocean.
Yes.
It just
I,
all comes together.
and it's all water, you know? So watercolor, boom.
Boom! Wow, watercolor for the win. Wow. Last one. What would you say an activity or hobby, something that you are the best at besides watercolor or meditation? I won't let you answer those two, but
Mhm.
what's another thing that if you have any time in your life for, you just have a knack for, you're really good at?
I have a very strong gift game. So if people, if I'm texting friends and they're saying something, then I am very good at responding with a clever gift that continues the conversation or enhances the conversation.
Wow, you're gifted at gifting,
Yes.
and there's a gift for that. Well, Olesa, how did I do? Was that accurate?
um, it was close.
Wait, what did I mess up?
Olesa, and like the last part is very
Olesa,
quick. Olesa.
Olesa. You got it better. But
Yeah,
anyway,
I got it. I got it.
so anyway, Volta, thank you so much. No, this has been really, really cool. Just love what you're all about, and it's so cool how you've turned this from something you kind of dreamt about and something you did at lunch breaks to like a real full-time business that's helping somebody out there. So thanks again for coming on. Where is the best place if people want to connect with you, get your book, listen to your podcast, like all these awesome things? Where's the place to send them to?
Max, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's such an honor to be here and just loved our conversation and the energy that you created in our space here, even though it's virtual. Like I could just, so thank you so much for doing that and
Of
having
course.
me.
Thank you
And
so much. Sorry, go
and
ahead.
let's see, sorry,
No, let
let's
me
see.
just ruin it here at the end of it. No, you go ahead.
People can connect with me on my website, which is colorsnack.com. I also hang out on Instagram, which I have 2 accounts, Color Snack and then Watercolor Meditation, which is specific to that side of my business. And then I'm also very active on LinkedIn. I love that platform. So on there, I'm Volta Voloshin-Smith.
Awesome. So, Ola, no, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to try the first name again, but last thing, final thoughts. It could be a quote or just kind of like a final little message, words to live by, maybe a pun, whatever you want. Send us home here.
I wish I could have thought of a pun because I love puns. I literally like love them, but I can't. So I'll just say this. My parting thought is to encourage whoever's listening to just keep showing up for your dream and do the uncomfortable, step out of your comfort zone, embrace that part of the process, even though it's, just not fun sometimes, but it is so worth it because there's just so much magic on the other side of what we're fearing and what we're scared of doing. So just keep showing up.
In other words, do the pun comfortable.
Yes, yes, perfect.
Unbelievable. Thank you so much, Volta, for sharing your incredibly story that will pun you up in Color Snack Story. And thank you, wild listeners, for tuning in to another episode. If you want to hear more wild stories like this one, make sure to follow the Wild Business Growth Podcast on your favorite podcast app. And I know that's a lot of word, podcast. And tell a friend about the podcast, especially a friend who may be interested in watercolor meditation. Ooh. You can also find us on Good Pods, where there are good podcasts and good podcast people and podcast recommendations. And for any help with podcast production, you can learn more at maxpodcasting.com and sign up for the Podcasting to the Max newsletter. That is at maxpodcasting.com/newsletter. Until next time, let your business pun wild.
Bring on the bongos!